Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to another Unitrends Power Half Hour. My name is Max Francisco, and I'm a customer marketing manager here at Unitrends. Today we have David Fried, our solutions engineer, talking about how to back up remotely, essentially, and how our tools help you keep total remote operations of your IT infrastructure. So before I go ahead and pass this to David, I just want to say that feel free to send us your questions using the WebEx Q&A box, and I'll bring them up during the presentation. And we'll also do a quick Q&A session towards the end. So we are ready to go ahead. So with that, please, David, take it away.
Yeah, welcome everybody, and thanks for taking time out to join us here today. Want to kind of walk through some of the things that we've been doing internally and helping customers with. I talk to a lot of our partners and customers all the time as far as, what tools do we already have, where data's shifting and things like that, how to kind of address our IT needs as they've kind of exploded and changed quite drastically in the last month or so. I'm sure everybody's in that situation or planning for it or recovering from it in one form or another. Anyway, today just really want to kind of go over a few things. The Unitrends systems that you potentially have or already have out there deployed, we're probably used to managing those remotely. You don't have to touch those, but kind of a couple different things that customers don't always look for in there, how to kind of make sure that you're getting the most information to you so you have less things to do going out and touching those. Another part is going to be going in, what kind of health status can I check in from afar? What can I see from here? And then a little bit more, more and more data has now dispersed in a couple different locations, whether it's in cloud platforms or on laptops or desktops that people have taken home. And as this continues, what other tools, what kinds of things should I be looking towards for long-term management of the systems? So a little bit about managing the systems remotely. I'm seeing that something in the test that you're able to hear me. Okay, Max?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, we just have a couple of audio issues out there, which is one of the fun and the challenging things that are out there. Oh, went too far on that. Then go back. Clicked on one too many things. So yeah, so we're getting out there. Want to kind of bring up the interface here to kind of talk about a few different spots here. One is everybody's kind of used to the dashboard and what's out there, and kind of a little bit more how context sensitive this is. You can see I'm looking at this. Oh my goodness, I've got 12 errors. So it's like, I want to very quickly get into that data. A single click takes you to that backup failure report. You're probably getting these in email already. Another click lets you bring up what that log is to kind of reach out. Our support guys are out there really providing great support through all this. The other thing, kind of look across all this stuff, is maybe that protected status. Where you can see, hey, I've got 59 systems not protected. Whether they're registered, do I have some systems that are aging? This might be a great time to take some time, go through and clean up what's in my protected environment and find out, there's a couple key things here. Is the data protected locally on the appliance? Is it being sent somewhere else in there? Which ones do need to be sent off-site to a different location? And another key thing in here, I don't know how many people out here may have tape or rotational drives that they're having to go in and touch. This might be a great time to consider tools that automatically get the data off-site. Say, go into the Unitrends Forever Cloud, or potentially off to a third-party cloud, or even a NAS device in the interim. Kind of reduce the amount of times that you may have to be going into the office to check things out, and it kind of going through what the overall organizational risk is. And so, good time to kind of walk through these environments and figure this all out. the next part is really kind of getting through what can I be doing, making sure that my backups are running correctly, the things are out there. I don't know how many people have worked with or have access to recovery assurance as part of the Enterprise Plus platform. A couple easy ways to check whether I've got Enterprise Plus. One of the ways is just kind of go into the about and see what your licensing piece is. Kind of come up with the overall licensing platform is for your system in here. Where do I have Enterprise or Enterprise Plus in my physical appliances? But this allows you to kind of automatically test those backups and work through the environment on that. If you haven't done these before, it's real easy to kind of set one of these up. You can see right here, I've got my overall systems of what's being protected, not protected in here. It comes through, it lets you set a variety of steps to kind of power on virtual machines. Just in case you haven't looked at this for a while, let's walk through setting one up real quick. So it's all based in the protection status. So if you don't want to check your licensing level, one thing you can do, see if you have this data copy access button available to you on your system. Go into data copy access. Now this will allow me to kind of set up tests against a VMware or a Hyper-V environment. I'm just going to leave it on VMware for now. It lets me kind of look at the backups that I have available for the environment. So I can come through and, instead of just testing one server at a time, I can actually come through and say, hey, I've got an Active Directory and a SQL and my front-end web server. I've got an ERP or something, some kind of application group that comes together in there. I can come through and make sure that's all working together. And so I can add usually I'm adding 2 to 4, maybe 5 servers at a time in a single test as they group together. Then, you kind of set up the lab environment here. And there's a couple different ways to set that up. So if I can come in and manage or edit additional lab profiles, so you can have different RPOs and RTOs that you're testing against. And it's really coming through saying, what host do I want to use, what storage environment for that environment, what network. So typically I'm going to set up a sandbox network, not my production. You basically just set up a standard VLAN that has no network ports associated to it. And away you go. So you've got a little sandbox that these systems can now talk to each other and interact. And then for any of the compliance reporting, you can enable recovery point or recovery time objectives to say, I want to make sure that I'm able to boot up within, like a 1-hour time frame or get down in the minutes. And here, like you can see in the examples that I've got on this system, the systems are booting up in around 5 to 10 minutes. So I could actually cut that 1 hour down potentially. And also, the recovery point objectives gives you another compliance level check to determine what level of how frequently the backups are running. So if you say, hey, I want to get my daily backups, or I want to make sure I'm getting backups every 4 to 8 hours or 6 hours, and that's my schedule, I'll actually check every time it runs, what's that oldest backup in the set. So once you set up your lab environment on how that's going to work, you can go ahead and pick whichever one you want to use and click next. Then you can set a schedule to have this run on a daily or weekly basis. You can also create an on-demand schedule so you can turn around and just run these manually if needed. But then it allows you to come through and say, set up these different pieces in here. So I can come through and say, during this time, the SQL server normally has 8 gigs of RAM. I'm only going to give it, or 8 CPUs, I'm going to only give it 4, and 16 gigs of memory. So I can actually come through and make modifications like that across there, during the test. Or I could potentially come in here, change some location and re-IPing, but typically you're going to want everything talking on that same subnet. And then come through and adding 1 or more tests in there. This being a SQL server, I've got a lot of pre-canned tests, so I can come through and say, I want to check a SQL instance status in here, and the default name is, I'm going to use default as the SQL instance. If I've got name statuses, you can include those in there. come there and say, hey, I'd like to add another test for that particular one. Maybe I've got an application-specific service in there that I can come through and say, you know, this is my service. It's going to make sure that that's running. You can actually set delays and timeouts and so forth. And so you can keep adding different components into this, you know, and say, you know, I've got a particular server on that, save that one out, come in on the web server, potentially, you know, make those same changes, but come in here and do a few things where I'm going to say, you know, hey, this one I want to run a PowerShell script, and, you know, the script path, you know, I can say, you know, I've got something in here for testing, and say I've got a script out here that's PowerShell that says it's an application test, right? So it's testing an application component in there. I could pass arguments in there. This could actually do a deep level application test against that in there. You know, I'm going to also want to make sure stuff like the web service is running on there. So I've got, you know, pre-canned reports on all that to kind of come through and make sure all that's working. If I was working off that file server, I might come in here and add a test on the file server to actually run a malware scan against the main drive or folder. So real easy to kind of set those up, get those running in your environment. They'll start populating in your dashboard for the recovery assurance components, and allows you to kind of come through in the jobs to do a couple different kinds of testing in there, whether you're dealing with running those jobs over as manually as you need to, or spinning up in an instant lab where you can actually do some additional tests against that and maybe run pushing out labs, and hopefully no one ever needs to use the failover. But this is actually the exact jobs we use in our cloud to spin up for those 1 hour and 24-hour SLAs. The last part really gets into, you know, making sure you're getting those email reports. And I'll just kind of remind everybody where that is real quick. So if I'm looking at my appliance, click on edit. I've got the email in here, so you can come in and set up the different accounts. Typically, you can see we've got individuals set up here. A lot of times we're going to really want to use a distribution list instead. The appliance jobs, the appliance reports, it goes to the weekly status report, failure reports, and so forth. One thing to kind of notice that we've got here is we're using Office 365. So even though like Tommy is at unitrends.com, notice we've actually gone in and gotten the URL for the direct send off Office 365. So you can actually put that in there and save yourself configuring some relay if you guys have moved things to 365 or other cloud services. That's a real quick look at what's going on as far as managing the individual appliances out there. As we kind of look through the next component, you know, what kind of health checks, you know, what are we looking for to kind of improve upon this to get better? Well, basically released, it's actually being uploaded today, or no, yesterday, is with release 10.3.4 is something called Helix. This is basically going to allow proactive monitoring for your backups, give you some ways that we can proactively improve and target common errors and get those fixed. There's actually a free version that comes out there and helps manage the appliance remotely for you over a secure port, where it's actually just looking for automatic updates. So once you get to 10.3.4, that's the last, I think that's wrong. I think it's 10.4.3. Someone got a little dyslexic. You know, that release that's going to be out there to kind of get that fixed up in there. You know, it's really no effort on your part. It's all cloud managed in there. It'll evolve over time. It's easy setup. There's basically in your appliance, there'll be when you do the update in the advanced section, there's a part where you enable Helix and make sure that it's running in there. And then the other part is just changing one setting to say, I would like this system or this appliance to get automatic updates. From that, it actually registers up to the Unitrends cloud services, same things we're using to track proactive hard disk monitoring for hard disk failures. We're going to look for things kind of push down agent updates to you. There's also a paid version where we can kind of look across your systems that you're protecting. One of the common errors that we see out there a lot that we're starting out there is fixing volume shadow copy service issues. So as they detect and see that either as part of a backup or the system is reporting up with those kinds of issues, we can actually have the appliance reach out and fix those systems to kind of make sure you don't have to rerun backups on that. The system's going to continue to look at other common errors. The support team's got quite a number of those, and our partner community has submitted several things through Kaseya's application exchange. So we're looking at evolving those and moving those into the system as it moves forward here. So it's something that will be self-tuning, take care, and work through all the environment. We're kind of real excited to kind of look across that. Now, one of the big things that's happened, at least with Unitrends last week, all the endpoints just went and scattered to the wind, right? I'm sure everybody else has had something very similar to that in there. And we kind of all know that, that's kind of the biggest attack vector that everything's out there, whether it's email and phishing techniques, a lot of ransomware. Actually, Microsoft issued a warning to hospitals last week about be ready for additional ransomware issues coming up. So really got to look at all this data, where the data's been going, how's it going to continue to get protected, because customers aren't there on their corporate network the way they are. They may or may not always be thinking to or always connected to those back-end services. At Unitrends, one of the big things we use here is Office 365. I'm a remote employee, so I've been using OneDrive for quite some time. We do have a lot of other customers or other end users that didn't always need to use that. They were using local internal file servers. Our internal IT worked really hard in the last couple of weeks, getting everybody set up for 365, getting the data there, and getting people used to starting to use that. That's going to really cause an explosion there, and something we need to start looking at how is that being protected. Because when you look at this model, Microsoft and Google's very similar, is they're there to provide that service continuity. 365 and Office 365, Google Drive, that's just going to be there. Malicious insiders or ethical, hackers external, they're going after this data segment here. Whether they're trying to steal it or they're trying to get back in, excuse me, steal it, or they're trying to get in and actually erase the data and cause some additional mischief. So what we're looking at from there is our spanning offering around Office 365. We've actually just, making sure that everybody's protected on that. Gone a little bit further recently is now featuring dark web monitoring. So let me kind of pop into that real quick. Ready to go. Hold on a second. There it goes. Sorry about that. So basically with the Office 365 in there, what we've actually added in there, one thing you want to do if you're using 365 or some other cloud suite option, you want to make sure that you're protecting things. We didn't always have everybody protecting their OneDrive data, so we want to make sure that that's getting protected in addition to the mail and the calendar and contacts and so forth. So that that way all that data is there, it's protected. If I have an issue, say if Frank comes in there and say I need to come through and restore data because he's lost data or something's happened there, I want to know that I can actually just go into his OneDrive just as easily as I can to his email and say, hey, I need to restore this data back to you, right? So I'm going to push that right back and send that back over to Frank. But the big part is not only are people starting to use the OneDrive a little bit more, we've been finding through other Kaseya companies, a lot of customers are tending to reuse passwords. So I'm using the same Office 365 password as I do for other things, or I register, say, for this event or for another system out there where people are stealing the data and those credentials to be mischief and hijack the data, or hijack the session, or hijack someone's email. So we've actually included dark web scanning with Office 365 in here. If you've got this today, you should see this starting to show up as a little tickler page, and this is something that can be easily added in there. But it allows you to come through and see which systems are active, which ones you may or may not have remediated. Does this actually involve part of a password in there that I need to kind of talk to the user about, because this one looks fairly simplistic. Other types of things in here. So here's a pass@word probably, and where it came from, where this content may be used. The dark web scanning is not just for the Office 365 accounts that you're protecting, but it also includes protection for all email addresses in your tenant, as well as your entire Active Directory environment as part of your tenant. So any of the accounts that potentially have been hijacked or pulled outside. So we're really excited about adding that in as a feature for the customers. The next part really gets around, we've just really pushed out all this data. Do I really need to do anything more than that, as far as if I'm just start protecting the OneDrive and Google Drives and I've got my internal resources, am I good with that? What I'm finding is, and what I know Eddie, our IT manager, kind of looks at quite a bit, is that's usually not good enough, because as they've pushed all these people up there, users will inevitably store something, in their download folder that's important, or move it into accidentally save it in My Documents because that's not their default location, or they're just used to that, or they've created a special folder right off the root of their seat and started putting things there. So, we want to say, I need to get all the data that's out there. Well, again, Unitrends has been working really hard in the background as we get ready. We actually just released last month a direct to cloud backup to kind of work for the mobile users and laptops that are out there. You can also potentially catch servers that are out at a remote site that you may not have been protecting in the past in there. So there's a couple different easy ways to kind of back that up. It's all using the same Unitrends Enterprise class file level backups that you have available internally today. It's hardened down for those roaming and endpoints, as well as its bandwidth aware, and kind of watches for available bandwidth to check to say, hey, have I checked in for a while? I'm checking in. Is there a backup that I need to run? Is there a recovery I need to run? It's going to do that all there, but it's all cloud-based with multi-tenancy, simple per user, per month subscription in there, very easy to kind of get rolled out and get started with. Let's go ahead and jump in that real quick and take a look. So if I kind of get into this, this is basically the overall interface there to kind of set that up, and it really sets it up in 3 easy steps. The agent you deploy is very much like the file level agent that you'd have today with Unitrends. It actually has a separate component that creates that secure channel to the cloud. So all the backup jobs are running with the same front end component of the agent, and there's a different back end to give a secure channel and bandwidth awareness to the cloud. It provides a little bit of a difference there, but that actually keeps you and lets you untether that from the environment. There's a couple different ways to deploy that out there. So if I'm coming through here, if we're working with assets, I can do a single installation. I know our internal IT guys did a bulk installation where we kind of pushed that in, gave us the time to kind of just shove that agent out through. You can actually use about any tool. It's standard deployment package. So you can use SCCM or other things. We, being Kaseya, we're using VSA internally, so we've got actually some special features in VSA to help manage and track that out, and integrate those across there, but gets that out to all the users so that we can then start adding them to this component and scheduling the job. So once we have those in there, it's really just setting up, associating those individual assets back to a profile of what you want to back up. So it gets into say, hey, we're basically concerned all the laptops pushing out. I just want to grab the C drive. There's a couple default ones that are in here, but you can come in and create your own profiles. And then it's really just pulling this together in a job. That's me come in and set a new job and say I want to get the profile. Who's not protected yet is the next step. So I can come through and say, well, there's Fred's workstation. That's not a good one. He's, Fred's our CEO. Want to make sure he's protected. Let's get Joe's workstation out there too. And I want to get these out there. So pulling those together, how frequently I expect them to check in? Well, Fred's a pretty important person to me. So I'm going to say, I want to make sure we're catching his stuff about every 4 hours. Very simplistic in here is, if the system isn't online over the weekend, it's not going to reach up. The system's not going to have failed backups. It's just going to say, hey, I haven't seen this one in the 4-hour time frame, or haven't seen it in a certain 24 hours, and impacts its overall health score, of how that's running. So I can actually kind of look at that from a dashboard level and say, I've got 45 agents registered, 31 of those I haven't seen in the last 72 hours. So these are the ones I might want to go through and say, which one's back on the asset page have I not, when were they last seen? Some of these you can see in my environment here. We deployed the agent, but never really turned it on. Once I've got that all done, the recovery is just as simplistic. We want to kind of make this very easy to work through. So I can come through and say, hey, I've got, C. Allen's laptop. He happens to call in. I've lost some data recently. The most recent point's always at the top. Let's say, hey, I actually lost it last Friday. And kind of roll back a couple days, go back to the 3rd. And this will allow me to either say, hey, we've lost the whole laptop. I need to pull all the data. Or I can just as easily kind of drill in to the environment and say, I've got a couple different folders or individual files that I need to kind of restore and set that up, click next. And it's like, where do I want to put this to? It can actually go right back to the same person's laptop, or you turn around and say, hey, I'm going to drop this in to a NAS internally in here. Put it on C. Allen's laptop, click finish. What that'll actually do is walk through and queue a job. I'm not going to expect that to show up right away. It's going to queue up a job to start doing that recovery. And the next time the target works up, if I'm having to send it right back to Fred or C. Allen, it's going to pick that up. So that's a real high level, quick overview of how to protect some of the other data that's out there that you've got. So everything's changed very rapidly here for everybody. So I want to kind of give you additional tools or what else you could be doing to kind of protect data as it's kind of scattered to the wind. A couple other things that, just to kind of finish, we're getting right here at the bottom of the hour, half hour here. This is going to, this continues to evolve. Unitrends, like I said, provide a variety of tools under something we call IT Complete. One of the biggest things here to kind of help you remotely manage those systems and patch and keep those up is keeping everything update as things have just now scattered out there is, some remote control, remote management for the support team. BSS is our remote management monitoring tool to kind of get that data out there. If that's something you need to find you need some strength in, feel free to reach out. There's also tools around compliance and security. Great time to look at multi-factor authentication. And one of the biggest things we've got down there is with IT documentation. That plugs in across most of our products right now, and it will be across the rest of them out there. So as your environments have exploded recently, keeping track and making sure your documentation is up to date and accurate for the entire team is very important. So having something like IT Glue to kind of manage and track all that data that goes through is also very valuable during these times. I've got a couple of resources here that I'll send this deck over to Max when we're done, so you can kind of go through and find this data. But, like I said, just want to kind of go back over, make sure you've got your systems in a way that you're managing, or this is a good time to tune up your backups. If you've scattered data out to other places, whether it's in a cloud that you can protect more with spanning backup or protect out there with Unitrends Cloud Backup, it's a great opportunity to kind of look at those offerings, make sure that you're covered on those ends before data starts getting lost in those environments. Look at disaster recovery as a service. Helix is coming out there to kind of help make your job easier and self-heal backups at any errors that are out there that are coming. As always, we've always got different promotions and programs to kind of help you kind of look at how to get these data in there. With that, I just want to open it up real quick to any questions and answers on anything. And thank you for taking time for listening.
Thank you, David. We do have a question here, and the question is, for Helix, who does it apply to? What's the ideal customer for Helix?
It's really for just about any customer in there. Mostly, two big scenarios that it's pushing out right now is auto updating appliances. So it kind of pushes for, if you've only got one appliance, it's one that's like, okay, it's a nice to have, but if you've got, I was talking to somebody here yesterday that has 4 or 5 appliances at their different sites, county government in the Midwest, and that fits very well for them, because that way he doesn't have to really track about the updates, because he thought he was up to date. 2 of the systems were on 10.4 or something already. The other ones were on 10.3.3, which is back from last March. So it makes it very easy to do that. The other part really gets to be people that are heavily on the Windows systems that they're backing up with an agent. For the paid version, that's the initial kicker out there, is trying to help and manage VSS errors. That's something customers that I talk to realize, they have systems that have routine issues with that. It's more on the Microsoft side, but how do I keep track and manage those and still maintain my backup compliance? So that's the other main customer kind of look at for the initial offer. And like I said, that's going to evolve throughout the year. And as we find more systems that we can QA and scripts to kind of resolve backup issues automatically, or provide automatic spin up in the event that some system is down for, say, more than 2 minutes. Those are the types of things that can be added into Helix throughout the year. So be kind of on the lookout for those too.
Perfect. That was a perfect answer. But I think I know what they kind of wanted to know is like, who, what does Helix apply to all customers, or all customers with appliances? What kind of Unitrends products do they need to have in order to have Helix?
Yeah. For Helix, there's two versions of it. So the first one is just to kind of manage patches on your Unitrends appliances. And so that could really apply to anybody with either a physical or virtual Unitrends appliance. That one's free, and so there's not a paid for service in there. All you got to do is turn that on. So once you install 10.4.3, I noticed I had that dyslexic in the slide. Once you're on 10.4.3, if you enable Helix, when 10.4.4 comes out in a month or so, it'll automatically find time to update and send you an email. Hey, I was able to go and push this update to you, and your system is up to date. Or it could potentially, if you have a very busy system out there that it's not able to do that, it'll notify you, hey, I tried for the last 48 hours to find a free time after this update was available and wasn't able to do that. So basically the free version is something anybody should be looking to install and open up, as long as your systems are accessible to the internet. You're getting backups over the internet. The paid version is more people, again, doing a lot of Windows agent-based backups initially, and as you go forward, kind of keep an eye out through intercom messages or other things on our website for how the systems are being improved as we go through there. It's kind of like, Helix will be like parking your Tesla in the garage and get the software update overnight. And also we've added 2 or 3 more systems that you can opt into.
Perfect. So the last question we'll take here is can Helix be enabled for system monitoring without enabling the automated updates?
Yep, actually you can, because the system monitoring can be done separately. That's done with an add-on for a Windows agent installed. The automatic updates is applied on the appliance itself, so that could actually be enabled or disabled separately.
Okay, perfect. Hey, with that, I wanted to thank everybody, and I wanted to thank David for giving us this, all this content today. Um, and yeah, I believe that's it for today. We are going to send this to everybody that attended, and people that registered that could not attend. They will also receive the recording of this presentation. So, David, thank you for your time.
Everybody, thank you for taking time to spend your afternoon with us. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.